You can lose the job. You can lose the house. You can lose the opportunity, the position, the title, the income, the investment, the applause, the relationship. But if you never lose yourself, if you keep building you will rise again. That's the great equalizer. That's the anchor. That's the power they can't strip from you. That's the treasure that inflation can't touch, recession can't break, and envy can't steal. The question isn't, what are you working on? The question is, who are you becoming? We spend hours perfecting the resume, the pitch, the presentation, the product. We climb ladders that scrape the skies of external validation. But the truth, the brutal truth, is that no position will protect a man who has neglected his character. No opportunity will sustain a woman who has abandoned her hunger to grow. What you build on the outside will always bow to what you build on the inside. The roots always decide the reach. And if the soul is starving while the image is thriving, collapse is only a matter of time. So work harder on yourself than you do on your job, because your job will grow as you grow. Your life will reflect the blueprint you hold in your mind and the disciplines you stack in your habits. See, jobs are borrowed time, but character is owned time. Skill is currency, but mindset is kingdom. And the truth is, your income rarely exceeds your identity. Your position will rarely rise higher than your perspective. And if you want something different, something greater, something next level, it doesn't start with chasing more, it starts with becoming more. Become a person worthy of the dream, not because you fake it, but because you forge it. Not because you hustle harder, but because you think deeper. Not because you talk louder, but because you listen longer to wisdom, to truth, to what life is trying to whisper in the silence. Most people are working hard at making a living, but too few are working hard at making a life. They invest in tasks and to-dos, but never invest in their temperament. They polish their LinkedIn, but never polish their principles. And they wonder why success feels so temporary, why joy slips like sand through the fingers, why peace is always on the other side of one more goal. Because they never learned that the job isn't the destination, the self is. So here's the charge. Refuse to let your job outwork you. You sharpen the skills. Now sharpen the self. You chase the metrics. Now chase the meaning. You develop the product. Now develop the person. Because when you do, something remarkable happens. The job changes because the person walking into it has changed. Doors open not because you knock louder, but because you've become the kind of person who doesn't wait for permission to walk through. Growth doesn't respond to force. It responds to alignment. You don't need more force in your life. You need more truth. You must choose to become the kind of person who doesn't just want success, but attracts it, commands it, and sustains it by who they've become. That's the real game. Not what you're doing, but who you are when no one's watching. Not the size of your paycheck, but the size of your thinking. Not how busy you are, but how brave you are to confront your weaknesses, to confront your excuses, to confront your smallness. And oh yes, we all start small, but we were never meant to stay there. The tree was always inside the seed, but the seed had to break. And so do we. If you want to expand, you must endure the discomfort of excavation. You must dig into the soil of your own mind and pull out every weed that was planted by fear, by society, by convenience. You must uproot every story that told you to stay small, to stay quiet, to stay safe, because safety never births greatness, and comfort never creates kings. You are not here to stay hidden. You are here to become powerful. But power is not noise. Power is clarity. Power is the person who wakes up with purpose in their bones and peace in their soul, not because they have everything, but because they are becoming someone who can handle everything. That's the kind of power that builds empires. Quiet power, consistent power, inner power. And to access it, you must go where most never do. You must go within. Master your thoughts or be mastered by them. Train your emotions or be ruled by them. Shape your habits or be shackled by them. Because whether you like it or not, you are in the gym every day. Not the gym with weights and treadmills, but the gym of life. Every moment is either strengthening your character or weakening your resolve. Every decision is either building your future or borrowing from it. Every hour spent numbing is an hour not spent becoming. So trade entertainment for education, trade excuses for execution, trade comparison for conviction. Do the inner work, not the glamorous work, the gritty work, the journaling, the meditating, the late night reading when your body wants sleep but your soul wants transformation. The lonely walks when the world doesn't understand your hunger. The mornings when you rise before the sun, not to impress someone, but to keep a promise to yourself. That's the work no one applauds, but everyone feels. Because when you walk into a room with that energy, people don't need to ask what you do. They feel who you are. That's the difference between a resume and a legacy. That's the difference between being impressive and being undeniable. See, success is not something you pursue. It's something you attract by the person you become. And who you become is shaped by what you repeat. The morning routine that sharpens your mind. The deep reading that expands your lens. The challenges you don't avoid, but welcome. The commitments you don't break, even when no one's looking. That's the slow grind that forges the unstoppable man, the unshakable woman, the kind of person who doesn't crumble in crisis, but becomes even more clear in it. Because when the storm comes, and it will, you don't rise to the level of your potential, you fall to the level of your preparation. And preparation doesn't happen in public, it happens in the shadows. It happens when you do one more rep, not in the gym, but in life. One more rep of patience when you want to snap. One more rep of discipline when comfort is calling. One more rep of faith when the path gets dark. That's how character is built, not in the spotlight, but in the silence. Not on stage, but behind the curtain. Not when it's easy, but when no one would blame you for quitting. Because you would know. And the gap between who you pretend to be and who you truly are, that's the weight that will break you or build you. So work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Because your job might feed you for a season, but your character will feed you for a lifetime. And when you become the kind of person who pours truth into their mind, discipline into their actions, and love into their work, you become dangerous. Not because you're chasing success, but because you've become irreplaceable. And irreplaceable isn't found on paper. It's found in presence. It's found in power. It's found in the person who walked through fire and came out forged not by luck, but by choice. So choose wisely. Choose growth. Choose the path few travel. Because in a world obsessed with doing more, your advantage will be becoming more. And when you become more, the world cannot ignore you. They cannot ignore the person who shows up every day as if destiny is watching. They cannot ignore the one who treats every small task as sacred, every moment as meaningful, and every breath as borrowed time. Because there's a fire in that person's eyes, not just ambition, but alignment. Not just hunger, but honor. Not just movement, but meaning. That person is not racing. That person is rising. And the rise is quiet. It doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't post for attention or shout for approval. It simply becomes undeniable through consistency, through depth, through mastery, through the internal compounding of private victories. You want success? Good. But understand this. Success doesn't come to those who seek shortcuts. It comes to those who build standards. A standard that says, I don't miss workouts not because I'm obsessed with fitness, but because I refuse to break promises to myself. A standard that says, I speak with integrity not because it's easy, but because I understand that words shape worlds. A standard that says, I will not outsource responsibility. I am the author of this story. And if I don't like the chapter I'm in, I sharpen the pen and rewrite it. You don't rise by accident, you rise by alignment. Alignment between what you say and what you do. Alignment between what you dream of and what you suffer for. Alignment between who you were and who you are called to become. So when you feel resistance, lean in. That's not a sign to stop. That's a sign you're close to something sacred. No growth comes without friction. No greatness without cost. We are sculpted by pressure. Diamonds are not made in comfort. and neither are legacies. You want to be irreplaceable? Then build something in yourself that no market shift can touch, something no layoff can erase, something no algorithm can outdate. That something is not your skill set. It's your mindset. It's your capacity to evolve, your ability to endure, and your refusal to go back to sleep. Because most people are asleep, walking through life numb, distracted, sedated by convenience, lulled by mediocrity. They've traded their soul for a paycheck and their time for approval. But not you. You are not most people. You are a builder not of businesses alone, but of inner empires. You are not chasing titles. You are chasing transcendence. You are not playing small, because you know that comfort is the silent killer of kings. It lulls you in with soft lies while quietly assassinating your edge. But your edge is sacred. It's what makes you dangerous to a world that worships average. It's what makes you unshakable when everything around you is crumbling. And the edge is forged in the dark, in the moments where no one claps, in the mornings when you rise alone, in the nights when you resist the call of the easy way. That's where greatness is built, not in the big leaps, but in the brutal consistency of the small steps. So stop looking for breakthroughs. Start building standards. You want to become a magnet for opportunity? Then raise your internal thermostat. Elevate the temperature of your discipline. Because life doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you are willing to tolerate. You can't outperform your self-image. You can't escape your patterns. You can only transform them. And to do that, you must become a different version of you. Not by abandoning who you were, but by evolving it. There's a next level version of you that doesn't just show up to work, he shows up to war. She walks into rooms and shifts the energy not by noise, but by presence. That version of you does not negotiate with laziness. That version of you doesn't need motivation because discipline has taken over. Motivation fades. Discipline finishes. So train it. Train it in the morning when the alarm screams louder than your excuses. Train it in your words when gossip beckons, but wisdom bites your tongue. Train it in your habits when you do what's right, not what's easy. Because every time you follow through, every time you delay gratification, every time you win the invisible war with yourself, you are stacking power. You are compounding confidence. You are building a fortress within. And one day, when the storm comes, and it will come, others will panic. But you will stand calm in the chaos. Not because you trained for the storm, but because you trained above it. You became a person the storm could not touch. That's what happens when you work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Because jobs come and go, markets rise and fall, but the person you've become, that's permanent, that's priceless. The market can't outdate you because you are always updating yourself. So, update your vision. Don't shrink it to match your current life. Expand your life to match your future vision. Update your habits. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Create one by acting as if the future is already yours. Update your circle. Walk with those who challenge you, not those who coddle your comfort. And above all, update your identity. You are not your job. You are not your past. You are not your current bank account or your last mistake. You are a builder of destiny. You are a sculptor of self. You are the fire that refines, the stone that endures, the soul that rises. And when you realize that, when you live from that truth, you'll never fear losing a job again because you've become someone who can always create another one. Someone who doesn't chase opportunity but attracts it. Not with desperation, but with depth. This world is not short on jobs. It's short on people who are ready for them. So be ready. Be refined. Be so rooted in who you've become that when the winds shift, you don't flinch. Because you've been building not just a career, but a core. Not just an image, but an identity. Not just a resume, but a reputation built on truth, forged in discipline, and powered by a fire that never needed applause to burn. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. And one day the world will work for you. Because when the world starts working for you, It's not because it changed, it's because you did. You elevated, you evolved, you expanded beyond the old limitations, beyond the narrative that kept you small, beyond the cages that were never locked but felt like prisons anyway. And when you did, life responded not out of charity but out of law, the law of alignment, the law of identity, the law that says you cannot hold a vision in your mind, act in accordance with it daily, and not eventually become it. That's not a motivational line, that's physics. Energy moves to match intention. And when your intention is fierce, focused, and fueled by discipline, the world starts to bend in your direction. The doors open, not because you knocked louder, but because you arrived with the keys. The keys forged in silence, in sweat, in solitude, in the unseen hours of work that nobody celebrates but you, the early mornings when you chose progress over pillows, the late nights when you chose purpose over procrastination, the weekends when you chose wisdom over wasting time. That is the real flex, not what you post, but what you practice. See, most people are out here flexing results, but you flex resilience. Most people are showcasing what they've done, but you're focused on who you're still becoming. That's the mindset of the uncommon. The uncommon don't ask, what do I get if I do this? They ask, who do I become if I do this? Because they understand that outcomes are temporary, but identity is permanent. And every small decision is a vote for the person you're becoming. Every time you choose the hard way over the easy way, you cast a vote for greatness. Not fame, not flash, greatness. And greatness is quiet. It doesn't scream in the streets. It's not interested in being liked. It's interested in being aligned with purpose, with principle, with the deep, unshakable knowing that you are not here to blend in. You are here to build something eternal. Not just a career, a contribution. Not just income, impact. Not just survival, significance. But here's the truth no one likes to hear. That version of you is not free. It comes at a cost. And the cost is your comfort. The cost is your distractions. The cost is your need for validation from a world that doesn't even know what it wants. Are you willing to pay that price? Are you willing to sacrifice who you've been for who you could become? Because the gap between where you are and where you want to be is not skill. It's not time. It's identity. And identity is not discovered, it is designed. You have to become it first, before the success, before the applause, before the rewards. Become it in your habits, in your standards, in your speech, in your silence, in the way you carry yourself when no one's looking, in the way you speak to yourself when things fall apart, in the way you rebound from failure, not because you're unbreakable, but because you refuse to stay broken. That's real strength. That's real transformation. And it starts not with chasing the world, but with changing your world, the inner world, the battlefield between who you are and who you pretend to be. The war between the version of you that settles and the version that soars. And only one can win. So every morning, ask yourself, which version am I feeding today? The victim or the victor? The coward or the creator? The consumer or the contributor? Because whichever one you feed is the one that will lead. And if you want to lead in this world, truly lead, you must become someone worth following. Not because you're perfect, but because you're authentic, because you're committed, because you're clear. Clarity is power. Purpose is fuel. Discipline is the bridge. And identity is the engine. Build that engine. Fine-tune that machine. Because when your identity is forged in truth and discipline, there is no environment that can stop you. There is no rejection that can shake you. There is no failure that can define you. You become inevitable. And that's the goal, not success that comes and goes, but transformation that stays. The kind that echoes. The kind that doesn't just change your income, but your impact. The kind that makes the world better because you had the courage to become the person you were always meant to be. But none of it happens until you make the shift. The internal shift. From chasing to choosing. From wishing to working. From hoping to habits. From waiting for someone to discover you to realizing you must first discover yourself. That's the root of it all. Self-discovery, self-mastery, self-respect. Because when you respect yourself enough to demand growth, the world starts to reflect that growth back to you. The world meets you where you meet yourself. So raise the meeting point. Elevate your inner expectations. And don't you dare shrink your vision to match your environment. Expand your environment to match your vision. Your job doesn't define your ceiling. Your mindset does. And when you work harder on yourself than you do on your job, you tap into a source of power no position can give you and no failure can take away. That is the power of becoming. And once you taste Itance, you see the horizon from that mountaintop of inner strength, you will never settle for less again. Because once you've seen what's possible, when you commit to building yourself, you can't go back to average. You can't go back to excuse making, to finger pointing, to playing the victim in a world that rewards the warrior. You can't unsee your own potential once you've stood face to face with it and realized that everything you've ever needed has been within you the entire time. And yet, the tragedy is, most people never meet that version of themselves. Not because it doesn't exist, but because they never paid the price to unlock it. They negotiated with discomfort. They avoided resistance. They outsourced responsibility. And they wonder why life feels hollow, why success feels fleeting, why they keep building towers on sand instead of stone. But not you. Because if you're still here, still listening, still breathing, still grinding, then you've chosen a different path. A path few will understand, but many will one day admire. A path where the prize isn't just what you get, it's who you become. A path where you stop chasing jobs, titles, and applause and start becoming a force of nature so rooted in purpose, the world has no choice but to respond. That path begins and ends with this truth. You must work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Because your job may build your lifestyle, but only working on yourself can build your life. And what is life if not a mirror of your inner world? What is success if not the byproduct of alignment? What is legacy if not the long echo of your daily decisions? You must decide who you are, not when it's easy, not when it's sunny, but when it's dark, when your plans collapse, when the rejection letter hits, when the deal falls through. That's when the world leans in and listens. Because your response in those moments reveals who you've been building behind the scenes. If you've been building a version of yourself that can only thrive when things go right, you'll break when things go wrong. But if you've been building a version of yourself that creates right out of wrong, who finds clarity in chaos and discipline in disappointment, who plants seeds in storms and still believes in the harvest, then you're not a person waiting for success. You're a person worthy of it. That's the difference between people who visit success and people who live there. Visitors want the view. Residents built the house. Visitors need momentum. Residents are momentum. Visitors post wins. Residents replicate them. So you have to ask yourself, which one am I becoming? And if the answer isn't yet what you want it to be, good, because that means there's still work to do. Not external work, not busy work, not just stay occupied work, but inner work. The kind of work that changes how you walk into rooms. That silences your need to prove yourself because your presence already does. That keeps you anchored in storms and humble in victory. That whispers to you in the night, you are not done. You are becoming. And you listen. You rise. You train not for aesthetics, but for endurance. You read not to impress, but to expand. You speak not to dominate, but to elevate. And every day you do this work, something inside you shifts. Your baseline rises. Your ceiling stretches. The impossible starts to feel inevitable. And the life you once dreamed of begins to feel like a minimum standard. That's the shift. That's the reward of working harder on yourself. Your life doesn't just improve, it transforms. And the world doesn't just respect you, it reflects you. Because the world is a mirror, not of what you want, but of who you are. And every day you get to decide who shows up in that mirror. The tired, stressed, overworked shell of a person chasing validation, or the grounded, sharpened, ever-evolving soul who knows that external success means nothing without internal strength. So build that strength. Because when you do, you unlock a power. No market crash, no bad boss, no canceled project, no failure can take from you. And that power becomes your edge, your advantage, your light. And in a dark world full of noise, distraction, and desperation, that light, it's what sets you apart. And in that light, people start to notice. Not because you're louder, but because you're clearer. Not because you beg for attention, but because you carry intention. There's a gravity to a person who has worked on themselves, a presence, a silent roar. When they speak, you listen. When they move, you feel it. When they walk into a room, the air changes not because they are special, but because they've made themselves exceptional through relentless self-honesty and daily sacrifice. They've stared down their flaws and didn't flinch. They've burned their excuses in the fire of daily effort. They've faced their fears and realized they were just untrained thoughts dressed as facts. And now they don't just walk with confidence. They walk with conviction. And conviction is rare in a world built on convenience. Because convenience will always try to convince you that ease is the goal, that less friction means more peace, that you deserve to rest without earning it, that you should just be yourself, even if that self is undisciplined, unfocused, and unaware. But the truth is, you were not designed for comfort. You were designed for conquest. Not conquest over others, but over your lower nature, the part of you that wants to quit, the part that wants the results without the repetition, the part that wants to be celebrated for showing up instead of being challenged to grow up. And that part, you've got to bury it daily. Because your future is not built by the comfortable parts of you, it's built by the courageous parts. The part that shows up even when no one claps. The part that does the work when no one sees. The part that says, I will not be defined by my job title, my past, or my pain. I will be defined by what I build within. So build something worth carrying. Not just for you, but for those who come after you. Because legacy doesn't start with death. It starts with discipline. It starts with who you become when you don't feel like becoming anything. When the motivation runs out and all that's left is a choice to rise or retreat, to believe or break, to continue or collapse. Choose to rise. Because every time you rise above the old version of you, you send a signal to the world that something greater is possible. That mediocrity is not a birthright. That greatness is not reserved. That ordinary people, when they work harder on themselves than they do on their job, can become extraordinary forces of impact. That's not a fantasy. That's a fact. Look around you. Every giant you admire was once a beginner who decided to stop waiting for permission and start building their identity with intention. They weren't born unstoppable. They became it through relentless refinement, through obsession with truth, through the daily destruction of everything small inside them. Not because it was easy, but because not becoming that version of themselves would have been the ultimate regret. And that's what this is about. It's not just about money or success or goals. It's about becoming someone you're proud of when the world is quiet, when the applause is gone, when you're staring in the mirror and asking, did I honor my potential today? That's the question that will haunt you if you ignore it. But it's also the question that will forge you if you answer it with action. So answer it every day with your habits, with your focus, with your fire. Because life doesn't owe you clarity. It doesn't hand out purpose. It reveals it to the ones who show up over and over again with a willingness to do the work, especially the inner work, the hard work, the forever work. The kind of work that makes you dangerous to doubt, dangerous to distraction, dangerous to any version of yourself that once believed this is enough. Because enough is where most people stop. But not you. You will not stop. Because you're not working a job. You're working on you. And when you become the kind of person who never stops evolving, who treats their identity as sacred ground, who views every day as training for greatness, there is nothing you can't build. No obstacle you can't turn into a lesson. No loss you can't transform into leverage. No silence you can't fill with substance. That's what the world is waiting for, not louder voices, but deeper souls. Not more talent, but more truth. Not more resumes, but more real ones. And if you become that, if you commit to the long road, if you master yourself like you once tried to master your job, then you won't just succeed. You'll transcend. Because transcendence isn't a peak you reach, once it's a path you walk forever. It's not a destination, it's a decision, a daily one. To step beyond survival, beyond status, beyond the shallow waters of appearance, and dive into the deep current of who you could be. Only you refuse to stay who you've always been. And that path is not for everyone. It's not crowded. There's no map, no guaranteed applause, but it's rich. It's rare. It's real. Because only those who have forged themselves in silence will ever understand the quiet power that comes from doing the work when no one's watching. Let the others decorate their image. You develop your integrity. Let them chase promotion. You chase progress. Let them seek comfort. You seek clarity. Because clarity is the foundation. When your vision is clear, your habits are sharp. When your habits are sharp, your days are productive. When your days are productive, your years become legendary. And when your years become legendary, it wasn't because of luck, it was because you worked harder on yourself than anything else. You became the kind of person success is drawn to. You became rare. And the rare are not busy chasing, they are busy becoming. The rare don't ask for a better economy, a better boss, a better break. They build a better self and watch everything else adjust. Because life is always responding to you. Not your hopes, not your wishes, but your standards. Raise them. Not just in what you expect from others, but in what you demand from yourself. Raise the standard of your focus, of your discipline, of your daily rituals. Because in the end, you don't rise to the level of your dreams, you fall to the level of your systems. And if your systems are weak, so is your foundation. So build strong systems, build strong beliefs, build strong character, not for show, but for strength, for storms, for the days that break most people, but build you, because those days are coming. And you don't get to choose when, but you do get to choose who shows up to meet them. The old you, or the evolved you, the one who complains, or the one who conquers, the one who points fingers, or the one who builds solutions. Make that choice now, not later. Because every day you delay that decision is another day you stay stuck in the version of you that keeps settling. And nothing changes until you change. So change out of shame, but out of reverence. Reverence for the gift of potential you've been given. Reverence for the life you've been trusted to live. Reverence for the people who are waiting not to see what you'll say, but to feel what you'll become. Because you are the permission someone else is looking for. You are the fire someone else forgot they had. You are the example someone else desperately needs. But only if you commit. Only if you go all in, not just on the dream, but on the discipline required to carry it. That means no more waiting for the right mood. No more needing a perfect plan. No more getting ready to get ready. Just movement. Just mastery. Just one choice after another that says, I am becoming someone the world cannot ignore. And in time, the world will catch up. Not because you told them, but because you showed them. Through consistency, through clarity, through the calm power of someone who no longer needs to hustle for their worth, but who lives from it. That is the shift. The shift from hustle to harmony, from chaos to confidence, from noise to knowing. And it happens only when you decide that your life's masterpiece isn't the money, the fame, or the recognition, it's you. The sculpted you, the sharpened you, the unshakable, immovable, relentlessly evolving you. And once that's who you become, there is nothing left to chase. Because everything you were chasing now chases you. Because the moment you become that persona, the one who is no longer a prisoner of pressure, no longer a slave to circumstance, no longer addicted to validation, you don't walk into rooms the same way. You carry something different, a frequency, a vibration, a stillness that says, I've done the work, not just the resume work, the soul work, the healing, the pruning, the letting go, the self-examination under fluorescent truth, the nights you stared your weakness in the face and didn't blink, the mornings you rose from setbacks not with bitterness, but with a deeper fire, the afternoons you chose discipline over distraction, purpose over pity, and silence over needing to explain your worth. That kind of work changes your being. And when your being changes, the world bends. Not quickly, not all at once, but inevitably. Because when a person becomes deeply aligned, when their inner world is fortified, clear, and courageous, then their outer world cannot help but follow suit. It must match the strength of the container that holds it. But here's what most people get wrong. They think success will bring that clarity. They think the job, the title, the applause will finally settle the dust inside. That once they arrive, they'll finally have peace. But peace isn't found at the top of the mountain. Peace is found in the process of becoming. It's in the pain you didn't run from. It's in the patience you trained. It's in the person you forged from the ashes of your former self. You don't find peace when the world praises you. You find peace when you praise yourself, because you know you've done the hard thing, the honest thing, the right thing. You built you, and no one can take that from you. Not a recession, not a critic, not a betrayal. Because when your confidence is built from identity, not image, when it's rooted in growth, not approval, then you are no longer shakeable by external change. You become the change. And now you don't just get jobs, you create them. You don't just chase opportunity, you become one. You don't just attract abundance, you sustain it. Because you've become the kind of person success trusts. And that right there is the real difference. Most people want success to trust them before they've done the work to be trustworthy. But success is not fooled. It doesn't give its crown to the unprepared. It tests. It watches. It waits to see if your identity has caught up with your ambition. And when it has, then and only then will it hand you more. More responsibility, more influence, more resources, but only because you can carry it and not crumble. So if you feel like life hasn't given you what you deserve, maybe it's because you're still becoming someone who can carry what you're asking for. And that's not punishment. That's preparation. You're not being denied. You're being developed. Let it develop you. Let the slow days forge your stamina. Let the silent nights sharpen your vision. Let the repetition build your reputation, not just with others, but with yourself. Because in the end, what really matters isn't what people think of you, it's what you think when you look in the mirror. Did I do the work? Did I keep the promise? Did I show up when no one else would? Did I honor the assignment of becoming? That's the test. And if you pass it daily, not perfectly, but powerfully, then what you build will be unshakable. Because it won't be built on charisma. It will be built on character. Not on trends, but on truth. Not on performance, but on principle. Not on external hype, but on internal heat. And that heat will carry you through every cold season. That heat will fuel you when the world forgets you. That heat will remind you that you were never here to simply make a living. You were here to make a life that matters, a life that echoes, a life built from the inside out. And it all starts with one sacred decision. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Let me tell you something that most people will never say to your face, but you need to hear it more than anything else today. If your job is growing faster than you are, you're in trouble. If your income is outpacing your wisdom, if your reputation is growing while your discipline is shrinking, if the world is watching you succeed but inside you're eroding, then you're walking on a rope that's about to snap. And it won't matter how talented you are. It won't matter what your title says, how many degrees are framed on your wall, or what car you pull up in. Because success without self-development is the beginning of the end. You see, anyone can be busy. Anyone can hustle. Anyone can look impressive in the short term, but very few people will take the time daily to chisel away at their flaws, refine their thinking, expand their perspective, and fortify their mindset. Most people work hard on their job. They clock in, they perform, they meet deadlines, they build a resume, but they forget the most important work, the work they do on themselves. Because you are the foundation of every result in your life. You are the engine behind every outcome. And if you neglect the engine, the vehicle breaks down no matter how shiny the outside looks. So today, I want to challenge you not to work harder for your boss, not to work harder for recognition, not to work harder for money, but to work harder on yourself than you do on your job, harder on your habits than your paycheck, harder on your values than your goals, harder on your discipline than your deadlines, harder on your growth than your grind, because your job may pay you by the hour, but your growth pays you for life. Let's start with the mind, because everything begins there. Before a man builds a fortune, he builds a philosophy. Before a woman becomes a leader, she becomes a learner. And before you command the respect of the world, you command the truth inside yourself. You've got to reprogram the way you think daily. Your mind is not a one-time upgrade. It's a constant renewal. You've got to read the books that stretch your thinking, not just the ones that confirm it. You've got to ask the questions that scare you, not just the ones that comfort you. You've got to expose yourself to ideas that challenge your ego, test your assumptions, and push your limits. If your mind is average, your life will be average, even if you get lucky. But if your mind is elite, your future will bend to the strength of your character. Because here's the truth. Your job gives you tasks, but your mind gives you vision. And vision always outlives tasks. Work on your vision until it makes the work irrelevant. Until the job becomes the tool, not the goal. And now belief. You have to believe so deeply in your value that the world can't help but notice it. But here's the thing. Belief isn't given. It's built. Belief is what happens when you keep your word to yourself so many times, you can't help but trust who you've become. When you show up on the days you don't feel like it. When you act with integrity, when no one is watching. When you choose the long road. When shortcuts scream your name. That's how belief is formed, not through compliments, not through luck, but through consistent self-respect. The people who achieve greatness don't do it because the world believed in them. They do it because they believed in themselves before there was any evidence, and then they created the evidence. Next comes clarity. Clarity isn't something you wait for, it's something you fight for. Because life is noisy. The world throws distractions at you every second. Notifications, expectations, comparisons. And if you're not intentional, you'll lose yourself trying to keep up with people who are already lost. So work harder on clarifying who you are than you do chasing who they are. Define your values. Write your non-negotiables. Understand what truly matters to you and then build your life around that. Clarity isn't about knowing what you want once. It's about reminding yourself of it daily until it becomes a fire that consumes everything that doesn't belong. Now, purpose, don't skip this. Purpose is not a passion. It's not a job title. It's not something you find on a weekend retreat. It's something you decide. You don't stumble into it. You claim it. You breathe life into it. You pour your energy into something bigger than your ego. When you work harder on your purpose than your paycheck, everything changes. You stop chasing validation and start building impact. You stop faking confidence and start living conviction. You stop asking, what do I get from this? And start asking, what do I give through this? Purpose is the power plant. It gives electricity to everything else in your life, your job, your relationships, your energy, your focus. But only if you feed it. Then discipline. Now this is where most people fall. They start strong. They post about it. They buy the planner. They set the goals. But when the mood fades, so does the action. Why? Because they never trained their discipline to be stronger than their emotion. Discipline is working on yourself when it's inconvenient. It's showing up when the world gives you every excuse not to. It's doing the hard thing, the boring thing, the necessary thing over and over until it becomes who you are. Your job might require discipline, sure, but your life, your legacy demands it. Discipline builds the bridge between who you are and who you want to become. Now let's talk action. Because no amount of wisdom, belief, clarity, or purpose means anything without movement. You have to act on what you know. You have to act on what you say you want. You have to act even when you're uncertain, especially when you're uncertain. You don't wait for courage to act. You act until courage shows up. The world doesn't reward potential. It rewards execution. So while everyone else is planning, doubting, and scrolling, you move. You write the book. You launch the idea. You make the call. You do the rep. You invest the time. Every step forward is a vote for the future you're building. But here's the key. Don't act for applause. Act from principle. Don't chase outcomes. Create identity. Act not because it's easy, but because it's essential. Now, gratitude. This is the anchor, the grounding, the soil where everything else grows. Gratitude doesn't mean you settle. It means you see. You see the lessons in the loss. You see the opportunity in the work. You see the growth in the struggle. You see the gift in every breath. When you practice gratitude, you don't just elevate your mood, you elevate your perspective. Gratitude turns what you have into enough. And from that place, you build more. You don't become complacent, you become content with progress. You work not from scarcity, but from abundance. You give because you know you have more than you think. You grow because you're grateful for the chance to improve. And now, adaptability. Because life will change, plans will break, people will disappoint you. And if you don't adapt, you'll drown. Working harder on yourself means preparing your mind to pivot, not panic. It means letting go of how it was and stepping boldly into how it must be. The people who survive aren't always the smartest, they're the most adaptable. They learn, they evolve, they shift without losing their soul. They stay anchored in values, but flexible in methods. And finally, resilience. This is your armor, because there will be days when nothing makes sense, when your efforts don't get results, when you feel like giving up, when the mirror looks like a stranger, and that's when the real work begins. Resilience isn't how loud you roar when you're winning. It's how quiet you grind when you're bleeding. It's the ability to stand up after 10 knockdowns, dust yourself off, and whisper again. Work harder on your bounce back than your breakthrough. Because life isn't about what happens to you. It's about what happens in you and then flows through you. The world is watching the show, but the work, the real work, it's happening in the dark, when no one is clapping, when no one is posting about you, when no one is paying attention. And that's where greatness is born. That's where character is forged. That's where leaders are built. That's where legacies are written. Not in the job, not in the status, but in the quiet, sacred commitment to work harder on yourself than anything else in this world. So, go back to the basics, not because you're weak, but because you're building a foundation no storm can shake. Refuse to coast. Refuse to blame. Refuse to wait. You were not made to survive. You were made to rise. And every single day is a chance, not just to do your job, but to do yourself justice. And if you're willing to rise not once, but every single morning with resolve in your breath and discipline in your bones, you become dangerous. Not to others, but to doubt, to fear, to mediocrity. You see, most people live their entire lives reacting to pressure, reacting to opinions, reacting to circumstances, and they wonder why their life feels like a storm they can't control. But the one who works harder on themselves than they do on their job, that person creates the weather. That person doesn't ask for favorable winds, they become the wind. They don't wait for perfect timing. They act with perfect clarity. And it's that internal work, that unseen grind, that mental weightlifting no one applauds, which determines whether your success is temporary or transformational. Let's make something very clear. There is no finish line to this. You don't arrive at self-development. You don't complete the course and collect a certificate in becoming unstoppable. You build yourself daily. Every decision, every thought, every moment of resistance, every moment of honesty. Because the person you become is not born from comfort, but from choice. The choice to study when others scroll. The choice to rest with intention, not escape from responsibility. The choice to apologize when you're wrong, to stand firm when you're right, to face your flaws with courage and polish them into virtues. Let me ask you this. What would happen if you spent the next 6 months not trying to impress the world, but trying to elevate your worth? What would change if you poured your focus not into changing your career, but into changing your character? What would your life look like if you decided with conviction that you are your most valuable investment? Not your house, not your bank account, not your social following. You, your mind, your body, your ethics, your essence. Let me give you the truth. Nobody markets to you. Self-work is unglamorous. There's no loud applause when you choose the salad over the fast food. There's no standing ovation when you spend the evening journaling instead of numbing out on entertainment. There's no viral post when you confront your weaknesses, clean up your habits, and take radical ownership of your mess. But behind every quiet moment of discipline is a loud future screaming with possibility. Because when you sharpen you become the kind of person that opportunity seeks out. Not because of how you look, or how smooth you talk, or how many hours you work, but because of how deep your roots run when the winds of chaos blow. Let's talk about the roots for a moment. Most people build skyscrapers on sand. They decorate, they promote, they celebrate, and then wonder why their life collapses at the first quake. You've got to dig deeper than that. You've got to excavate the beliefs that hold you back. You've got to tear out the weeds of your excuses, your past narratives, your victim thinking. You've got to rebuild the foundation from self-trust, from integrity, from internal power. It's slow work, quiet work, but it's the kind of work that builds unshakable men and women. Because here's the reality. When you work harder on yourself than your job, you become employable for life by any dream, any mission, any destiny. Why? Because your worth is not rented, it's refined. Your value isn't conditional. It's cultivated. And your power? It's no longer reactive to the world's validation. It's originated from within. People will wonder how you keep winning. They'll say, you're lucky. They'll think it's talent. They'll assume it's natural. But you'll know the truth. You've been working in silence, in darkness, in daily decisions nobody sees. And the fruits they see are the result of roots they never studied. Now I want to speak to the exhausted part of you, the part that's tired of pushing, the part that questions if this internal work even matters. It does, because what you're building is not just success, it's substance, and substance endures. Substance is what remains when the lights go out. Substance is what walks in when the crowd walks away. Substance is what you fall back on when life collapses everything else. Success without substance is a sandcastle. But success with substance, that's a fortress. And only those who work harder on themselves than on their resume ever build one. You don't need to impress the world. You need to impress upon yourself that your time here matters. That your life is not a game to be watched, but a canvas to be painted. With bold strokes, with vivid color, with intention behind every brush. Let me tell you, you're not too late. You're not too far gone. You're not too flawed to rebuild. If you've got breath, you've got bricks. If you've got vision, you've got a plan. If you've got hunger, you've got a future. But you've got to build it from within. Your job will teach you skills. The world will teach you trends. But only you can teach yourself who you are becoming. And if you're wise, if you're serious about a life that means something, you'll stop outsourcing that responsibility. You'll pick up the hammer, you'll lay the brick, you'll write the words. You'll rise again and again and again. Not because it's easy, not because it's popular, but because you've decided, I will not let this world outwork me on me. And that, my friend, is the beginning of unstoppable. Unstoppable isn't a feeling, it's a decision. A decision to keep showing up. A decision to keep growing, even when no one is watching. A decision to build something eternal in a world addicted to the temporary. You become unstoppable, not because you never fail, but because you refuse to stop becoming. And when you carry that mindset, everything around you starts to change. You don't chase success anymore. You attract it. You don't beg for opportunities. You create them. You don't fear rejection because your value is no longer up for debate. You've already voted for yourself in silence with action. People will start noticing something about you even if they can't name it. They'll feel your presence differently. They'll sense your clarity, your depth, your quiet confidence, because you'll no longer be walking around trying to be someone. You'll simply become someone. You'll walk into rooms not hoping to be chosen, but knowing you belong not because of ego, but because you've done the work. And that's the secret most never learn. The work you do on yourself becomes the energy people feel from you. It's in your posture, your tone, your decisions, your habits, your pace. You no longer rush. You no longer chase. You no longer prove. You simply are. You become the kind of person who doesn't need motivation because your habits are stronger than your moods. You become the kind of person who doesn't need validation because your values speak louder than the noise. You become the kind of person who doesn't need to impress because your essence is undeniable. That's what happens when you work harder on yourself than your job. Your life becomes a reflection of your internal world. And when that world is fortified, pure, and intentional, the external world has no choice but to mirror it. So the question is not, how do I get ahead? The question is, who must I become to deserve what I seek? Because you don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. If you want excellence, become excellence. If you want respect, walk with integrity. If you want peace, master your reactions. If you want wealth, think like a steward. If you want love, lead with love. And if you want power, real power, don't look outward. Look inward. Now, let's be honest. This journey isn't for everyone. Most people would rather complain than change. They'd rather escape than confront. They'd rather wear the mask than reveal the truth. Because it's easier to build an image than to build identity. But that's not you. You wouldn't be here now listening to this if you weren't ready. Ready to stop pretending. Ready to stop waiting. Ready to stop negotiating with mediocrity. And start becoming the person your future is begging for. So don't let this moment pass as inspiration. Let it be your ignition. Don't just nod and say, that's true. Make it true in the quiet hours that no one else sees, because that's where your life will shift. Not in the public, not in the ceremony, but in the repetition, in the decision to wake up early, to journal when it's easier to scroll, to say no when it's unpopular, to lift when you're sore, to listen when your ego wants to speak, to learn when you think you already know. This isn't about changing your life in a day. It's about deciding who you are and proving it daily. So, how do you begin? You begin by looking in the mirror and asking, what part of me needs to grow today? And you attack that part with love and intensity. You begin by carving out 1 hour a day, just one, where your focus is on growth, not tasks. Reading, writing, reflecting, planning, practicing, training. 1 hour where the world doesn't get a say, only you do. And slowly but surely your identity begins to shift. Not in loud leaps, but in quiet layers. Until one day you look around and realize the world didn't change, you did. And because you changed, your results changed. Your relationships changed. Your career changed. Your decisions changed. Your life changed because you stopped outsourcing your power. You stopped being a product of your environment and became the architect of your environment. You built something the storms couldn't take. You built something the critics couldn't shake. You built something the failures couldn't break. You built you. So the next time someone asks you, what do you do? Don't just tell them your job. Tell them the truth. You work harder on yourself than anything else. Because when you do, everything else takes care of itself. And that daily work of becoming is the most important job you will ever have. You see, the world keeps telling you to hustle harder, grind faster, rise earlier, sleep less. But here's the deeper truth they don't say loud enough. It's not about how hard you work, it's about who is doing the work. Because if the wrong version of you is hustling, all you're doing is building a future that won't fit you. You'll chase goals that don't fulfill you. You'll attract people who don't value you. You'll make money doing things that steal your spirit. And at the end of it all, you'll be holding trophies that don't matter, wondering why you still feel empty. But when the right version of you shows up, the one who's aligned, disciplined, awake, intentional, the work becomes sacred. The results become a reflection of truth. And success becomes a byproduct, not a pursuit. That's why your greatest work is not in what you build out there. It's in what you build in here, inside your mindset, inside your emotional intelligence, inside your belief system, inside your principles. Because jobs come and go, markets change, titles expire, but the person you become, that stays, that compounds, that shapes every room you enter. So let the world keep rushing. Let them chase status. Let them sprint on treadmills of burnout. You build slow. You build deep. You build right. Because you're not here to impress. You're here to impact. And impact starts with the discipline to sit with yourself, to face the uncomfortable, to question the stories, to upgrade your habits, to rewrite your narrative. You stop outsourcing your accountability. You stop blaming your boss, your past, your family, your country, your circumstances. You take the steering wheel, not because it's fair, but because it's yours. That's what it means to work harder on yourself than your job. It means you value identity over image, character over clout, depth over decoration. You realize that legacy is not what you leave behind. It's what you live right now. Every word, every interaction, every choice. You become a walking example of what's possible, not by talking about it, but by being it. And yes, it's hard. It's hard to hold yourself to that standard. It's hard to rise when you're tired. It's hard to stay grounded when the world is shouting. It's hard to keep pushing when the rewards are invisible. But you don't do it for the easy. You do it for the evolution. Because when you work harder on yourself than you do on your job, you don't just make money. You make meaning. You don't just build income, you build impact. You don't just earn rewards, you earn respect. Starting with the person in the mirror. And that is priceless. So let me leave you with this. Every morning, you wake up with a choice. You can either continue being the version of you the world has shaped, or you can become the version you were born to build. And if you choose the latter, if you choose the path of growth, depth, and internal mastery, you'll find that the job, the income, the recognition, all of it will come. But not because you chased it, because you became it. You became the kind of person success couldn't ignore. You became the kind of soul the world needed. You became the kind of mind storms couldn't shake. And all of it started the moment you said, from this day forward, I will work harder on myself than I do on anything else. Because you are your greatest masterpiece. So build wisely, build daily, build relentlessly. And the world will watch in awe as you rise. There's a currency more sacred than gold, more unforgiving than failure, more powerful than talent, education, or even connections. It's the currency that every legend protects. And every average life squanders. It's not money. It's not luck. It's not opportunity. It's time. Time is the only resource you cannot borrow, beg, steal, rewind, or replace. You don't get to save it. You only get to spend it. And what you spend it on will become the story of your life. Every second, a seed. Every minute, a mirror. Every hour, a brick laid in the structure of your legacy. And the cruel truth, most people are bankrupt. Not financially, spiritually, emotionally, purposefully, because they've traded time for the illusion of productivity, for the comfort of distraction, for the noise that keeps them busy, but never better. They wake up without purpose, move through their day without urgency, scroll through their hours like time is infinite, but it's not. It's perishable. It's dying as fast as you're breathing. And every second you waste, someone else is using that same moment to build, to sharpen, to rise. This isn't fear. This is truth. Because when you understand the value of time, you don't just respect it. You revere it. You treat it like royalty. You protect it like gold. You use it like fire in your hands. Because what you do with your time reveals what you truly value. You say you want success, but how much time did you give your dream today? You say you want freedom, but how much time did you waste on people who aren't free themselves? You say you want legacy, but how many of your hours are being spent building anything that will outlive you? Time is the great equalizer. It humbles kings. It empowers the unseen. It doesn't care about your past. It doesn't listen to your excuses. It only answers to your discipline. So, ask yourself, what is your relationship with time? Do you lead it, or does it lead you? Do you command your calendar, or are you a servant to circumstance? Do you start your day with intention, or do you wake up already in defeat? Because here's the truth. You don't have a time problem. You have a purpose problem, a priority problem, a personal standard problem. When time becomes sacred, your life becomes focused. Your yes becomes valuable. Your no becomes powerful. You stop entertaining what doesn't build you. You stop delaying what your future is begging for. You stop wasting hours on things that drain your spirit. Because you realize the way you spend your time is the way you spend yourself. And you were not made to be average. You were made to amplify, to execute, to rise. When you truly understand the value of time, you stop living like you have forever. You stop postponing your greatness. You stop pushing your potential into a mythical someday that never comes and never will, unless you command it into existence today. Because here's the harsh truth. If you died tomorrow, would the hours you live today have meant anything? Would they prove you were becoming who you said you'd become? Would they testify that you used your time with honor? Or would they echo back with silence? The silence of wasted potential, of borrowed time, of dreams that never got built? You see, you can't manage time if you don't first respect it. And you can't respect time until you understand that it doesn't care who you are. It only serves the committed. Time is like a mirror. It doesn't reflect what you want. It reflects what you prioritize. It reflects who you are when no one's watching. And this is what separates the ones who rise from the ones who always talk about rising. The successful, the fulfilled, the legendary. They don't treat time casually. They don't wake up hoping the day goes well. They own it. They build it. They bend it to the rhythm of their vision. Because when your life is urgent with purpose, time becomes a weapon, not a weight. You use every minute to shape something that matters. You walk into each hour like it owes you legacy. You protect your schedule like it holds your freedom, because it does. You don't give hours to the past. You don't give hours to people who don't respect your future. You don't give hours to excuses that have outlived their usefulness. Instead, you carve out space for mastery. You calendar your discipline. You schedule your future like it's your duty. And that's when time begins to multiply for you. Because here's the paradox of time. When you honor it, when you fill it with focus and purpose and execution, you get more of it. Not in quantity, but in quality, in impact, in clarity, in results. One focused hour in the hands of a person on fire with purpose is more valuable than a full day of scattered distraction. This is the difference between the extraordinary and the exhausted. They're not working harder. They're just working cleaner, more aligned, more precise, more present. They've learned how to say no, like their life depends on it, because it does. Every no to distraction is a yes to elevation. Every no to nonsense is a yes to your name being written in history. So ask yourself, what are you giving your hours to? What is your time feeding? What is your time creating? Because time is not just passing, it's taking shape. And what it becomes is up to you. Then stand tall, because this is the moment where your life pivots. Not next week, not when it's convenient. Now, because if you've truly understood anything up to this point, then you know this isn't about clocks. This isn't about to-do lists or productivity hacks. This is about honor. Honor for your calling. Honor for your mind. Honor for your one and only life. You see, the value of time is not found in how fast you can check off tasks. It's found in how deeply you can live each moment, how present you are in the creation of your future, how willing you are to pay the price today so you never have to beg tomorrow. Time is your teacher, your mirror, your currency, and your test. And every day you wake up with breath in your lungs, you are being asked one question: what will you do with me? That question comes with no warning, no negotiation, and no refund. You don't get to pause the clock until life feels fair. You don't get to rewind it just because you weren't ready. You don't get to fast forward to the good parts. But you do get to decide what you build with it. You do get to control what goes on your schedule. You do get to lead your hours like a king leads an army. That means no more killing time, no more wasting time, no more casual afternoons that bleed into purposeless nights. Every minute matters, because every minute is a vote. A vote for the life you want, or a vote for the life you're tolerating. You say you want greatness? Prove it with how you spend your mornings. You say you want peace? Show it by what you no longer allow into your mental space. You say you want legacy? Then honor your hours like the generations after you depend on it. Because they do. You don't get rich by working harder. You get rich by valuing time more than money. You don't build success by adding more. You build it by cutting what doesn't matter. And you don't create freedom by avoiding the clock. You create it by leading it, owning it, becoming the kind of person who uses time with surgical precision. And here's the final truth, the one that either breaks you or builds you. Your time is running out. Every minute is gone. Every breath spent. Every excuse stealing the only thing you can never get back. So stop waiting for the perfect plan. Stop waiting for motivation. Stop waiting for life to slow down and finally give you time. It won't. You make time. You declare war on distraction. You execute with clarity. You live so intentionally that time itself begins to bend in your direction, because that's what happens when your life is led with purpose. That's what happens when you decide right here, right now, that every day from this moment forward is a day you own, a day you build, a day you live fully aware that this moment is priceless and you're done letting it slip away. Let the world keep rushing. Let the clock keep ticking. Let others waste their hours in noise. But you move in clarity. You act with reverence. You rise with rhythm, and you lead your life like time is your most sacred resource, because it is. And now, you know exactly what to do with it.